And the new undisputed junior middleweight champion of the world, Jermell "IronMan" Charlo. And we got David Benavidez coming up. Let's talk about all of it. Roll that beautiful bean footage.
I hear him. Down goes Frazier. Down goes Frazier.
Hey, what's up with it, family? It's Hot Boxing Minute, your favorite pharmaceutical engineer turned boxing analyst, giving you that raw, that uncut, that real, because it's the only way I know how to dish it. And we definitely got to talk about that fight that happened at the Dignity Health Center out there in Los Angeles this past Saturday. Jermell Charlo, Brian Castillo in a rematch of that epic fight that they had last year. And it was not very far different, but it was very different than what we saw last year. As far as it not being different, they were going toe-to-toe at each other's faces almost from the opening bell. The rounds were hard to figure out, and they had the touchy-feely part to start off that first round. But midway through the first round, they were already getting up in each other's space. Similar tone to what happened in their fight last year, the hotly contested draw that everybody was upset about that they had out there in Texas. So this time they didn't have it in Jermell Charlo's hometown. They had it out there in Los Angeles. And in that first round, Brian Castillo was doing the same thing, using that application of pressure to try to disrupt Jermell Charlo's game. But as I had predicted in my prediction video leading up to that fight, it looked like Jermell Charlo was a little bit more focused. In that very first fight they had, it looked like Jermell Charlo was taken aback by Brian Castillo's approach. I don't think Jermell Charlo and Derek James really planned for Brian Castillo to be such a tough opponent in that first match. I think they were both kind of, okay, we've got this volume punching guy who's a lot more technical than we gave him credit for. Because I think a lot of people were under the impression that Brian Castillo was a bull inside a china shop. It doesn't matter whatever the approach was that had that closely competitive, hotly contested amongst the fans draw last year. This fight had a very, very conclusive ending for those of us that were lucky to witness it. Now, as far as my scores for what I saw up until the knockout happened, I had it almost a wash, y'all. Going through the first 9 rounds, I had it 7-2 in favor of Jermell. I could have argued maybe the second round as a swing round in favor of Brian Castillo, but it looked to me like Jermell Charlo, under the tutelage and guidance of Derek James, just came with that precise game plan. He was holding down the center of the ring. He was backing up every now and then, but not nearly with his back against the ropes as he was in that first fight. And when they would get into heated firefights, you could tell that Jermell Charlo was just landing a little bit sharper. To me, it was noticeable. Now, as I'm following on Twitter Boxing to keep in touch with what everybody else is thinking, a lot of the scorecards were coming across the same way. Leading into the 6th, 7th round, it was 4-2, 5-2 in favor of Jermell Charlo. It got down to that 10th round, and the 10th round was where magic happened. It looked to me like it was an uppercut, I think. It all happened so fast. It was an uppercut, and then followed by a hook, but it looked like it was the uppercut, and then all of a sudden it was delayed reaction, and boom, Brian Castillo collapses. He gets the 10 count, he stands back up and beats the 10 count, but it was clear that he was on shaky legs, and then Jermell Charlo went in for the kill. The referee called a stop to the affair. I don't even know if I have it written down. I don't, but hold on, I've got the page open. At 2 minutes and 33 seconds into the 10th round, Jermell Charlo gets the knockout victory win over Brian Castillo and becomes the undisputed junior middleweight champion. I know it's kind of cliche to say in the 4-belt era, but he is the first 154-pound junior middleweight champion in the 4-belt era as far as I know. I don't know what the stats are as far as junior middleweight undisputed in any era. I probably should have researched that prior to this. But hats off to Jermell Charlo. Comical post-fight press conferences were going down. Him and Derek James are sitting there. Of course, Derek James, the eternally cool as a cucumber dude that's cool with everybody. But Jermell Charlo, he was letting all of his critics have it. Mike Coppinger tried to ask a question. Jermell Charlo went off on Mike Coppinger. I'm pretty indifferent to Mike Coppinger. I think all old media is kind of cliche and outdated, but they have their purpose. But clearly, Jermell Charlo was not a big fan of Mike Coppinger. There was also a little moment where one of the Australian reporters asked Jermell Charlo, what's up with Tim Tszyu? Because Tim Tszyu, as far as I know, is the next highest rated competitor according to one of these rankings of these bodies. I didn't look at it either. I probably should have. And then Jermell and Jermall both snapped on this Australian reporter. So it was kind of fascinating. But I'm not one to dock him points for being loud or being rambunctious. I've always been a fan of the Charlos. When it comes to boxing, there is definitely an entertainment aspect of it, and you always get your dollar's worth as far as entertaining when it comes to Jermell or Jermall. If anything, I think Jermell might have the more fiery blood. He definitely likes to get angrier a lot more than Jermall does, but hats off to Jermell Charlo, the undisputed champion at 154. Everyone's talking about possibly him fighting Sebastian Fundora. I don't know how that match kind of works out, but we did have an interview with Jermell Charlo. He was speaking to Marcus Villegas, I think that's his name, from Fight Hub TV, and he told him that he plans himself, Jermall, Big Charlo, plans to move up to 168, which would leave 160 open for Jermell Charlo to vacate his belts and move up to 160 and start campaigning at 160. So, interesting moves if that actually plays out the way that Jermell Charlo said it does. I hope it does. I hope Jermall moves up to 168, starts checking some of those super middleweights. There are some fun fights up there at super middleweight. Obviously, David Benavidez, Jermell Charlo, the one we all want to see, Jermall Charlo, David Benavidez, and Caleb Blunt. You know what I'm saying? Chingos, Palos, Chingazos, so I would love to see any of those fights happen to go down. I don't know what's next for Jermell. At 154, he's got Sebastian Fundora. He's got Tim Tszyu. Both of them, I think, would be fun and entertaining fights. Maybe Jermell moves up to 160. If Jermall was to vacate that strap, I don't see much resistance for Jermell at 160. You got, obviously, the unified champion, Gennady Golovkin. He's got those two belts. I don't see Gennady Golovkin fighting anybody else at this point in his career other than Canelo Alvarez. I think Gennady Golovkin seriously would probably retire if he's not going to get that big fat paycheck and the end of that legacy trilogy feud with Canelo Alvarez. So it'll be interesting. I would love to see a Triple G and Jermell Charlo fight, no doubt. If I'm not mistaken, Demetrius Andrade has vacated his 160 strap. I don't know if that's official or not. He was supposed to move up to fight Zach Parker at 168, so that's a tentative situation. For now, I'm going to go along with the line of thinking that, in fact, Boo Boo Andre did vacate his WBO strap, so that effectively leaves only one champion if Jermell Charlo was to vacate his strap. So if Jermall actually moves up, vacates his belt, all we have left is Gennady Golovkin with the two belts, and I don't think Gennady Golovkin would fight Jermell if he moves up. But then there's also rumors about possibly Spence or Bud moving up to 154. So that's not off the table. But obviously, if those two want to cement their legacy in boxing history, they're going to have to fight each other. We need to get the Crawford-Bud fight. We need to get the Crawford-Spence fight, regardless. I think that's the one fight that no matter what, all boxing fans are unanimously in agreement of. We want to see Terrence Crawford versus Bud. Why do I keep saying it like that? We want to see Terrence Crawford versus Errol Spence. So, enough with that subject. Anyways, IronMan, Jermell Charlo, I was excited to see that fight. I hope y'all were excited as I was to watch that fight go down because it was riveting from beginning to end. Now, as far as this week's docket going up, we have got actually quite a few fights going on, and I'm just going to talk about the main one just for the sake of this video and the sake of time. David Benavidez, David Lemieux, it's the Battle of the Davids. Who'd have thought? What's the location they're going to be fighting at? Is it listed down? I don't even have it listed down. Great research as an analyst. Anyways, David Benavidez, 25-0 with 22 knockouts, has an 88% knockout rate, is essentially what many consider to be the super middleweight boogeyman. Nobody wants to face David Benavidez, apparently. Now, his fans of Bandera Roja will tell you that Canelo Alvarez is ducking David Benavidez. Canelo fans and most boxing pundits will tell you that David Benavidez has nothing to offer but a high-risk, low-reward fight. And for Canelo Alvarez at this point, it would be high-risk, low-reward. Everybody knows David Benavidez is a dangerous, menacing offensive threat. He throws in volume. He has excellent hand speed, and he has knockout power in both hands. He's taller than everybody. He's longer than everybody. He's just a problem. Not exactly the most light-footed of fighters. He's definitely what you would consider a plotter, roughly. But when you have offensive output like David Benavidez, you don't have to be light-footed. You don't have to be moving around like Caleb Blunt. Not by any means. He's going to be fighting Canada's David Lemieux. Now, David Lemieux is a boxer-puncher. In effect, he kind of reminds me of, who was that guy that why am I forgetting their names? Tim Bradley fought, the little Ruslan Provodnikov. That's who David Lemieux reminds me of. A bigger version of Ruslan Provodnikov, but with better defense. Ruslan Provodnikov, who gave us a couple of fights of the year, and he was just an exciting fighter to watch. The Russian Rocky. I don't know if you guys remember him. David Lemieux is on a similar kind of note. David Lemieux loves to get in there. He likes to punch it out. He likes to sit there in the phone booth and go at it with you. But he's definitely more defensively conscious. But he is he's a come-forward fighter, which is going to make it an excellent matchup for him and David Benavidez. We actually have not seen David Benavidez in the ring with a power puncher, the caliber of David Lemieux. David Lemieux's record is 43-4. 36 of those are knockouts. So where David Benavidez has an 88% knockout ratio, David Lemieux is at 84%. He's not very far behind. He's 43-4. He has considerably more experience than David Benavidez does. But as we have seen lately in the boxing world, sometimes having more in-ring experience doesn't count for something. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Will in this case? It's possible. David Benavidez seems to be riding a wave of confidence. Although his last few fights, I wouldn't say are necessarily confidence-inducing. He fought Anthony Durrell, who was probably one of the biggest names on his resume, if not the biggest name on his resume thus far. After that, he fought Romer Angulo, an okay name. Relatively unknown guys, Ronald Ellis and Kyron Davis, both of them talented enough in their own right, but not two fighters that fans would be directly familiar with. So he's got back-to-back wins over Ronald Ellis and Kyron Davis coming into this affair with David Lemieux. And David Lemieux has been in there with some of the toughest. He's got knockout wins over Curtis Stevens, Gary Spike O'Sullivan, Glenn Tapia. And, of course, a lot of fans remember when he got faded by Triple G, Gennady Golovkin. But regardless, David Lemieux has been in there and has been under the bright lights and experienced high-pressure situations. I can't say on too many of occasions we've seen David Benavidez experience that. Not that should be a problem for David Benavidez. Now, coming into this, Benavidez is the taller, the longer, the younger fighter. You've got Benavidez is 25 years old. Lemieux is 33, 34. He's 33 years old. So age could potentially be a factor. At 33 years old, it's not the oldest in the book, but David Lemieux does have that wear and tear of being in some crazy wars. David Lemieux has the most awesome left hook. It is a knockout left hook. And we did see in that first fight with Gavril and David Benavidez, the one where David Benavidez won the WBC super middleweight strap at 20 years old, that David Benavidez can be knocked down with a properly timed hook. And David Lemieux has knockout power in that hook. But in all honesty, I don't foresee David Lemieux being much of a problem for Benavidez. I see it being a rough going early on. But I think ultimately the volume of David Benavidez will be what breaks this fight. So in this head-to-head matchup between David Lemieux and David Benavidez, I think it's going to be a hotly contested affair in the beginning. David Lemieux is a veteran. He does have knockout power with that awesome left hook, but I think ultimately David Benavidez's size, his length, his rapid-fire output, his volume, his knockout power in both hands, his longer reach will all just eventually break down David Lemieux. I'm thinking a late stoppage in favor of Benavidez. What do you think is going to happen? Let me know in the comments section. But, like I said, don't be dismissive of David Lemieux. Anybody with knockout power will always have a puncher's chance in a fight. So, you got to give it up to David Lemieux. He might just pull off a crazy upset. We've been getting a lot of those in boxing lately. Anyways, boxing community, don't forget to hit that like. Hit that follow if you haven't already done so. Comment. Let me know if you got any ideas for some future videos. You know the deal, y'all. This is Hot Boxing Minute, the future of boxing analysis. Peace.